Americans are, by nature, we're more focused on quarterly earnings. We're not as long-term strategic thinking. And yes, to your point, the market will, care for all. I remember when you think about the first rare earth panic, let's say, was in the 2008, 2009 slash to 2012 time period. And at that time, we created a series of indexes that track the markets. And now we have, a lot of years of history of those markets. And essentially what we would do is we'd create a basket of metals and we would track their price changes month over month, which is basically how the Department of Labor does the producer price index. So we've had a rare earth index for all these years, 14 years or 12 years. And I will tell you right now, the rare earth metals basket is the worst performing of all of the metals. In other words, all our metal categories started with an index at 100
Right.
back in 2012, and the rare earth index, I think, is at 28 or 29. It's the worst performing of literally stainless, every type of metal. And that speaks to the power of China's monopoly. But I think the US is, I mean, look, we're out in Africa looking for, trying to create, there's a lot of things the Americans can offer as an alternative and as a competitor to what China's doing. Look, China's going into Africa. They're buying up and building infrastructure. They're buying up mines. They're doing joint ventures, but they're also stripping away a lot of the land. They're not helping the local populations as much as they can. There are things that the Americans can strategically offer too, and help get some of that supply allocated, or let's say rebalanced, such that the Americans have the opportunity to source some of those ores from, for example, places like the Congo. And I think our U.S. government is there trying to develop initiatives to do that. That's one piece. The second piece is I see a lot in the finance side, where the U.S. government is working with, whether it's the Department of Energy and other, Exim import banks, other finance arms of the U.S. government, to help support, some of the transactions and, loan structures, if you will, and working with companies also in the U.S. that are mining to create, financial packages that create good incentives to produce here. But I think what we're going to learn, if this hasn't been really out there, is that we may need to have government support those industries on a more long-term basis. There's other ways to do that. You can do offtake agreements, for example, and have have the federal government do offtake agreements for the strategic stockpile.
Right.
So there's a lot of different, let's say there's probably half a dozen buckets of things the United States can do to kind of allay some of what we're doing, with just trying to build this all ourselves. But there's also friendshoring. I think we talked about that, and your
Yeah.
article talked about alternative sources. That's a huge thing. Weapons, I should say, aerospace and defense contractors have access to different offtake and offsets, government offsets that they can use, and they can use and deploy those offsets. And I don't know a lot of details. I'm not an expert in that, but they can use those offsets as financial incentives to work in alternative locations and geographies where we
Right.
can friendshore.